are in Holly, Minnesota at Robert Olson Farms. We are around 2,300 acres. My dad is kind of the owner-operator, and my youngest sister, Kari, is starting to take over the operation and starting more into the management role here.
We're a diversified farm, corn, wheat, soybeans. My daughter, Nicole, most of the time she's just part-time when our busy season. She's helping getting the seeder ready to seed cover crops. And my daughter, Kari, who's kind of taken over the farm, is kind of in charge of everything.
We are fully no-till on 100% of our acres, and we experiment with cover crops. I started farming on my own 7 years ago, and I'm very fortunate to have the backing that I do with my dad and my grandpa. I wouldn't be able to do this without him. It takes a lot of capital and a lot of investment to get a farm going, and so I'm just really lucky to have this opportunity to be here and have a dad and a grandpa that are so open-minded to try these new things and let a girl onto their operation. This is super fun to see and super fun to work with.
At this point, I'm kind of a step in whenever they need me, especially in the spring and fall during the busy times. I love to drive the grain cart, the air carts, so I kind of fill in whenever they need me and wherever they want me to be at. I will say with no-till, you kind of have to be patient. We are usually starting about when everybody else is, maybe a tish behind because of some of that soil warming.
In the spring, we might have to practice patience a little bit, just because when we do have that residue out there, our soils might be a little colder and a little wetter. But I wouldn't say we're very far behind. We might be a few days delayed. Last year, I feel like our corn, for example, took an extra week maybe to fire.
Our biggest issue we were struggling with for a while was getting our wheat in with the soybean mat. Because wheat, obviously, we want to get in as soon as possible, but that soybean mat, when it's wet, it can get gummy, it can get hard to dry out. So that's why we were experimenting with the NRCS and other things of putting oats down or something to break up that mat to help not be such a mat anymore. And same with corn after our wheat. We are noticing that if you don't get that perfect chaff spread, if it gets uneven, if it's humid at harvest nights and you're getting the chaff uneven, it affects the corn emergence and growth the following year if you have too much chaff in certain areas and not in the other. So my sister actually looked at getting a stripper header, and she used it for the first time last year.
And what it does is the drum turns the opposite way, and it's got some fingers on it, and it just strips the heads of the wheat off. So it leaves all the straw standing and tall, and then you can get that corn seed directly down to black soil the next spring. So not only you're not dealing with that thick residue, but you're also heating up the soil a little faster. So hopefully we can get in the fields. Usually our corn ground's the last to go, and that was the warmest this year by about 10 degrees, which is surprising but awesome. We were really satisfied this spring with our corn. And then another reason was all that cutting that we're doing, and we're bringing it through the combine. It's a lot of wear and tear on the combine, and so we're reducing the wear and tear on our machines. The main reason for getting it was when we were cutting that straw and trying to spread it, that full 40 feet of the head, it wasn't quite spreading that far, and if you slow down at all with that combine, you're bunching up that residue. And a huge thing with no-till is you've got to manage your residue the fall before, or you're going to have issues the next spring. And if you don't manage it coming out the back of that combine, we don't have a piece of tillage equipment that can fix that. So that's our one and only option. It's just mainly making sure that we're getting that even spread and never slowing down the combine.
With the NRCS, we've worked on cover crops. That's kind of how my dad was actually able to get into no-till, was through the NRCS. That's how he was able to get his first no-till drill. We've done water basin things to help with our erosion and our water erosion. We've worked on pollinator strips and many different other side things within cover crops and no-till as well.
Working with the NRCS has been awesome. They're the type you can go to if you have a problem, and they're going to find a solution for it and help us work together to accomplish that.
I've been working with the Olsons for 2 years or so. The projects that they've worked on with NRCS have started many years back and just continued. They've done no-till cover crops, water and sediment control basins where they did actually still have some gully erosion. Even though they were no-till, the soils and the steepness still caused some issues with gully erosion where we could put a sediment basin in and stop that erosion. It's worked great. A lot of the projects that we've worked with here on the Olson farm have gone through our NRCS EQIP program. Either a one-year deal or the contract may be 3-4 years if they're willing to do the no-till and cover crops year after year. It's worked out great.
My dad got EQIP almost 20 years ago, and that is how he bought his first no-till drill. So that was really what jump-started him to keep going with this no-till progression. So he had started doing it in beans, and that was a no-brainer. But to really get it to work in wheat, he had to invest more in some equipment. And so that EQIP had helped him get that. And then fast forward 20 years and I get EQIP. And so this program's allowed me to experiment with cover crops that I might not be as willing to try when it's in your own money, in your own time, in your own investment, just to see what grows up here, what works and what doesn't. And that's been huge for us.
NRCS has been helpful in helping figure out how we can experiment to better ourselves. It gets scary to put money, time, and effort into these practices because they are an experiment. They don't always work the best. So being able to work with somebody that sees other growers doing different things, they're able to bring that knowledge, they're able to help with that funding a little bit to help even those blows out. And just being a sounding board of, I'm seeing this, can you guys tell me what's your recommendation? So they're just someone that's always there for support, for need, for help, and it's always appreciated.
I think the success story we see here with the Olsons is huge. Talking with Kari that she doesn't even really understand or know what the other farmers do for tillage in the fall and spring. She's never tilled a field. You don't see that many places ever. And the massive benefits that may not be dollar amounts, but with the soil health, those are huge.
We also use our air seeder to create a biostrip for corn as well. So our hopes is that kind of breaks up a strip for our corn the next year, and that will help break that up with other different plants and breaking down as well. So we're trying different ways to help alleviate those pains.
The benefit of no-till drilling into their wheat ground is that with the drill that they have on every 20 inches where their corn is going to be, they can do a biostrip, where I believe this year they're going to be using radish and flax every 20 inches, so that should degrade by springtime, and then they can plant their corn right into that strip. And it warms up a little bit quicker in that strip. The other advantage is that every 10 inches then they can put other cover crops or fertilizer in. This year I believe it's going to be oats and flax.
We incorporated cover crops, probably started 7-8 years ago. And how that originated was we were raising pigs back then, and the people who hired to inject manure would only come up in August after the wheat crop. I didn't like the manure going on that early, so I had read articles where using radishes and other cover crops to take up that nitrogen from the manure and release it the following year so we don't lose that nitrogen was how I got started. And then I really liked the soil health end of it, so then we started incorporating it in our other fields and still experiment with it. It's different every year.
Our hog manager that used to work for us, he now owns the barn and he custom feeds out of there. So we are lucky we still get the manure out of those barns. So we kind of rotate based on the soil tests where that manure is going to go around that 600 acres. They come up after wheat harvest, they inject the manure, and then we put these cover crops in to hold on to that nutrients and prevent it from leaching out of our soils. We're going to fill that drill. The center tank will have radish and flax, and that'll be on our 20-inch strips, which actually coincidentally line up with our corn rows the next year. So what the radish does is it breaks up some of that soil and the compaction for the next year for that corn. And also the flax, it brings up some nutrients from deeper in the soil profile. And then in between in the 10-inch strips, so that'll go in the front tank. I think this year we're going to do oats, radish, flax. The radish, flax do the same things I mentioned earlier, but the oats help take up more of that manure or provide more cover to the soil. And it depends on the timing of the season too. If fertilizer is needed, we'll put that out there as well at the same time. Otherwise, we've done field peas in the past to try to fix some nitrogen. Unfortunately, because we got the crop in late and we're harvesting it later, we are not going to put the field peas in this year just because there's not going to get enough growth out of them. Ideally, you want them on in the first week of August, and we're at the end of August here. This is Mac, professional farm dog. He taught himself this week how to climb in the combine on the tracks. He gets to join on a lot of our adventures. We are on 20-inch row corn, which is very, very narrow and not a lot of sunlight through. My dad had switched to 20-inch row to shade out weeds, and well, now we're trying to grow cover crops and it's shaded out. So this year I'm going to try flying on some rye in a couple weeks here in September and see what happens there when the corn leaves start to die and open back up. We've also experimented with flying into soybeans right before leaf drop. So we've done a radish and an oat mix there, and we've had some good luck with that. Another thing we're going to try this year is in switching up our rotation. So we're going to go from instead of wheat to corn, we're going to change some of our acres back to soybeans after wheat. And so we're going to drill in some cereal rye at a pretty heavy rate. And so we'll get a full stand out there, and it should come back the next spring and provide a lot of weed suppression out there. And then we'll seed green into that and kill it off depending on the moisture, either before or after seeding. We went fully no-till with our corn. I think the initial transition you might see a little yield drag, but we're not seeing that. I've calculated how much we're saving. I think we were saving like $6,000 per pass on each field. It was close to 30 grand before diesel prices were higher that we were saving on fuel alone. So even if we're not getting those top yields, we're cutting a lot of our inputs down. And so I'm more focused on our bottom line at this point and what's making us money instead of just the highest yield, because anybody can get the highest yield, but you can spend a lot of money on fertilizer too. So that was something that we had to change this year. Is we cut back a lot of our corn acres because the fertilizer prices were so high. We're putting down to maybe not get the highest yield, but make the most money. And so we did cut back some of our fertilizer, and we're doing some experiments this year, but things look good out there. We were actually pretty surprised.
We are right on average for yields what other people are doing. We're able to see and compare with others, and we know we're right there. I will say we may not always hit the highest yields, but we also don't hit the lowest yields. We feel like it has allowed us to get base hits, not home runs or drownouts. We're able to kind of stay steady, and which I think in farming, if you can keep more of a constant base, I think that's more important than always trying to get for the home runs, but we're right there.
They have yield maps. They know where it's profitable on their soil and where it's not. Those less profitable acres, we did sign up just shy of 60 acres, I believe, to put into our pollinator program, which is a huge benefit. The monarchs just went back on the endangered species list, which that's a big deal, but pollinators help pollinate everything. I think the overall importance of conservation on this farm and any farm around here, which the Olsons see, that if you want to be sustainable and stay in the farming game with prices of fertilizer going up, with fuel prices, you have to somehow lower your inputs. Conservation practices may not get you the highest yield, but they're going to lower your inputs. It takes time to go from a conventional tillage system to a no-till system, not just with equipment, but with dealing with different weeds, with trying to put fertilizer on at different times than you're used to. But in the end game, the inputs are less, which your return on investment is going to be that much greater. And it does free up time. You can free up time for family, time for fun, or with weather issues right now, the quicker you can get the crop in and the quicker you can get the crop off is huge.
The hard part about doing cover crops and no-till is you don't always necessarily see the money right there on your budget, but we can see trafficability. That wet year a couple years ago, we were able to harvest when other people weren't able to be out there. You can see the difference between the soil texture, how it filtrates the water. If you're out there, you can see the difference. So it's hard to put a value on that, but we're seeing that. We haven't had issues with aphids for quite a while, and I think that's all part of working with nature, having the right environment, having the soil work with us. And also, it goes a little bit with too of not having to do all those passes through the field. I mean, we are having to go through and seed, which is a pass, but we feel like we enjoy that better than a couple rounds of tillage in the fall and a couple rounds of tillage in the spring. So we're saving on labor and fuel and machine use at that point as well.
After a fall, when the combine rolls through, we're done for the year. I'm so tired and beat down. Dad goes, "You haven't seen nothing yet. Usually you have to go out and till all the fields up." And so we save a lot of time in those ways, and I think the time saving has allowed us to focus on other things.
Plus, we don't have actually much machinery or implements, so we don't have a lot of those background costs of that too. So it's hard to say for sure we see, but with those things, we feel comfortable with how it works in our farm.
This process was really slow. My dad started it 20 years ago, and we're just starting to see a lot of the benefits. Water infiltration has been huge. We've gotten a lot of huge rainfall events in the last couple of years where the neighbors are ponding. It's soaking right into our soil. And our soil's been so forgiving and almost like a sponge. For example, 2019 was really, really wet for us. A lot of people didn't get harvested, and they were out pulling combines out, and we were still going, and we didn't make many ruts out there. And I think we just can attribute that to a lot of our no-till practices. Another thing we've seen is the wind and water erosion, just not having those runoffs down the hills, especially out in Rolog, where we have some of our land. Another thing we practice is controlled traffic, so everything that we run is on 40 feet, And so we run every single tractor, they run on the same tracks, and so we only compact those tire tracks on the whole field and try to limit that compaction because we want that pore space for water to filtrate through air and our microorganisms to do their job out in the field. So that means our grain cart, we make sure they run on the same tracks, they don't run all over the field.
We use the cover crops as a way to build up the organic matter in our soils, make sure that we're not having wind erosion or water erosion throughout the winter and spring, and just to kind of help keep those microbes, those fungi, everything moving in and grooving into the soil. We've had some crazy years the last few years, whether that be early frost, lots of rain, drought last year, rain this year. So it kind of depends on the year what that looks like, but we usually try to get at least, I would say, a third or half covered. I know that we can increase our profits as far as labor costs. We're not having people having to dig in the fall and the spring. We're not having to run multiple times through. We hate rock picking. My sister and I can't stand it, so you don't have that whole labor and cost to that as well. I don't know if it necessarily takes away herbicide costs because we do need to terminate it in the spring, so that could be an extra cost to there. And it may allow some years for you not to have to spray it as much, but some years you might have to. It kind of just depends on what that looks like. But I do think we have healthier plants and we really don't have to worry about insecticides or fungicides. We try to stay away from those as much as possible. With no-till, drought, we do feel like it helps. We still are going to struggle. We're not completely resilient to not having water, obviously, but I do think that it helps, especially having a residue mat. I'm noticing that our soils are not as hot and they're not wicking away that moisture quite as fast. And whenever you have some type of mulch down, it always seems to hold in moisture better. So I feel like our soils can hold moisture better for a longer period than compared to others that we've seen.
Even last spring when guys weren't finding any moisture about 2 inches down, we still were. So that was neat to see.
Some of the benefits we get from the no-till is huge on wind and water erosion. This spring there were 50, 60 mile an hour winds around here. When we're driving down the highway around here, you can see the soil in the air. It's blowing all over the place. The Olson's fields did not have any of that. They benefited from their neighbor's soil blowing onto theirs. That's got nutrients in it and it landed on their field and they got some free fertilizer out of the deal. So that's huge with no-till. The cover crops, there's so many different benefits with cover crops. Just being able to have a living root, the infiltration, when we get these heavy rains, there isn't ponding on their fields. It pulls up those nutrients from far down in the soil profile up to the top where it's usable. The sediment basin, huge on fixing gully erosion. We've installed hundreds of them in the counties around us and they work wonderfully. It's really the communication between NRCS and the landowner. Everyone needs to be on the same page, know the expectations, and know that things don't always work out the way they do. There may be weather issues. We deal with it. We can push things off a year. We can modify things. There is some leeway with our programs to help you out there. If there's health issues in the family and we have to move things around, that's all things that NRCS can work with the producer and make work.
Behind me is our no-till drill. It has an air cart along with the drill or the seeder right behind too. It actually is what we use to seed our wheat and our soybeans. We usually do that in the 10-inch rows, and then we have 20-inch mid-manders to put down fertilizer. So this will be going to corn next year. So in our 20-inch openers, that's where our corn lines up. So I'll be putting radish and flax down in the 20-inch openers, and in the 10-inch openers, we'll be putting oats, radish, flax mix in between. So in the fall, we actually reverse it, and we actually have our corn on 20-inch rows. So we're able to put our cover crop that we want within our bio strip for our corn the next year in the 20-inch rows. And then the 10-inch, we can look at either putting fertilizer or, like this year, we have manure on some of the ground that we're doing. We'll do oats and radishes to help soak up the manure and then use those nutrients for the next year.
The practices that the Olsons are doing really have been handed down through the generations. Just the windbreak in the farmstead that we're in right now, that was put back in, I believe in the 60s. They've put other windbreaks in on their other farmsteads around here that the family owns. They're always looking to look at new and innovative conservation practices. A lot of times they come to us with ideas. They'll come to NRCS and say, what about this? Do we have a practice standard for that? Or can we tweak ours to make it work? We're trying to work with people just like Rob Olson Farms here. They're innovators, they want to try new things, they're willing to do it. If we can help bridge that gap, either with technical assistance or some financial assistance to assist them to install those practices, that if there is a yield lag or if something doesn't turn out quite right, they're not going to be losing out on everything they put into it.
A new project this year is the DOT fence that's going to be put in along Highway 10. We have a good stretch of land that is terrible in the winter. A lot of accidents for years, and they came to us and we agreed upon it. So they'll put in the fence this fall after wheat harvest here, and then we'll plant some type of CRP or a pollinator from the fence to the highway. So that's a way to give back to the community and make sure people stay safe out there, because time and time again, it's just right outside of our house and we see accidents. Another thing we've done is we've worked with Pheasants Forever, and that's tied with the NRCS, to find acres that were not productive and that we were wasting inputs on and finding other uses for them. I think last year we put in about 56 to 60 acres of pollinators in some of those places where we weren't making money on them, so why are we farming them? And those are taking off and looking good.
And I'm starting my own little thing of doing a cut flower business on the sides. My garden's been no-till now for 4 years, so I'm able to kind of help and do a little side thing for myself. So it's always fun to be able to keep working with plants. I love the whole pollinator strip part and the whole soil diversity, because I'm able to use a lot of what they're doing on a big scale in a small scale in my garden to help experiment, and I feel like it's helpful because I can see it on a smaller scale and really see what it's doing, and then kind of help them on the other side too.
If there's any other either local farmers or anywhere around the state or country, go work with your local office. We'll come out to you, we'll look at what your operation is and how our programs may fit. If it's just technical assistance, it's 100% free. We'll give you advice that we've seen, advice that we've got from other farms. We work with many, many farmers, and we kind of know their operation and what worked, and more importantly, what didn't work. If we can give you some of those ideas, and then if we can tie on some financial assistance if it fits, it just makes it better in the long run for everybody.
I think we all here have a common goal in mind, that we want this farm to continue generation after generation after generation. So a lot of people don't understand why we're doing what we're doing with the no-till and the cover crops, but I mean, it doesn't matter. It makes sense to me. I want this soil to not erode away, and I want it to be here for my nieces or my grandkids to be able to farm this. So I guess for me, the practices that he's done and all the research he's done here, Nicole and I weren't even on board by the time this was the normal. So I've never tilled a field in my life. I hope to never do that. I guess I didn't realize how different we were until I started farming, but it's normal to me.
To begin with, my grandpa was still involved, and my dad, and I was pretty young, just starting out farming. And it's been a long transition, and it's not overnight. You got to plan ahead, and it's probably 15, 20 years it took to get to this point.
Grandpa and Grandma both live here on the main farm. They're in the window every day watching us, and they'll come out for walks and check on us, or Grandpa comes and rides with us. For me, this is a family legacy that I got to make sure that I can continue on. And as much as my dad wants to say that there's not pressure out there, I put that pressure on myself, that I can't be the one to let this go away. And all three of us sisters grew up working on the farm. I knew from a really young age that this was just where I wanted to be. But my dad always made sure that we got to be kids and we got to do what we wanted to do, and this was never forced on us. And so he's been great this year in letting me kind of step into the role of management and take over, and him just get to enjoy driving tractor and relieve some of that stress off of him.
What my daughters have learned, I think, is basically conservation, whatever you can do to make the soil or environment better, to always keep learning. And I learned that from my grandpa and my dad, to keep learning and using the resources that are available, not to necessarily do it how we did it in the past, but try to keep the profitability and the yields and everything, but yet incorporating conservation practices that will prevent erosion and stuff like that. And I think that's what they do, because a lot of times if things aren't going right in the spring or whatever, it's so tempting to go grab that digger or hook up that wet spot, or they'll say, just wait, Dad, just patience. You don't realize when you're working how much they are learning. Sometimes as a dad, you think you're preaching to them and they're not taking anything in, but they are. And I am proud of both of them for what they are learning and will take on to the next generation.